Women Taking the Lead, episode 239.
What I realize more and more, especially as I've gotten older and gone through these things, is that it doesn't matter because I know my truth and I know who I am. So, yeah, they are probably not going to say anything. and likely I won't care.
Hello, my name is Jody Flynn and welcome to Women Taking the Lead, where we are all about creating blasts of inspiration to help you overcome self-doubt so you can lead with confidence, integrity, and a sense of humor. Have you joined the Women Taking the Lead private Facebook group? In this group, we are sharing our common experiences, asking questions, getting support, and cheering each other on as we take on new opportunities in life and in business. Go to womentakingthelead.com/group and click on the green Join Group button. Now, your future awaits, so let's get started. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm here with Giovanna Capozza, who passionately advocates for women to stop settling for less in all areas of their lives. She began her spiritual and personal development journey over 20 years ago and now acts as a catalyst for the transformation of the mind and the belief systems that hold you back and sabotage your life, relationships, and businesses. She calls her approach a form of radical self-love and responsibility, which brings forward more energy, presence, authenticity, and visibility in the people she works with. Giovanna, sign me up. Love everything that you've got going on. But just tell us a little bit more. As we all know, that's the tip of the iceberg of a person is their bio. So share a little bit more about you and your own humble beginnings.
Yeah, I was thinking, sign me up too. That sounds awesome. So, the first thing that comes to mind with that is maybe not my very, very humble beginnings, but when this whole journey started for me. And that was really looking at my life, and I call it suburgatory. I was living a suburban life, which is fine for a lot of people, but it wasn't working for me. I had a beautiful home. I had a handsome man who was a good earner, and I had a career, and, I had checked all the boxes, and I was, everyone around me was like, girl, you got it, it's all great. And I was unhappy. I was 40 pounds overweight, and I was already carrying about 30 pounds, through my adult life, but I was an additional 40 pounds overweight. My mom had just passed away a year earlier from cancer. And I was at this place where I thought, God, I have everything you're supposed to have, and I'm not happy. I'm not living the life that I set out to live. And I realized I was living everybody else's life. I was living my mom's life. I was, buying into what culture and society said I should have. And I wasn't happy. I was miserable. And so I had to take a long, hard look in the mirror after I realized I didn't recognize myself anymore and really just step back and say, what do I want? Because this is not working. And that was really difficult because what I noticed came up for me and what I see come up with so many women is that guilt and shame. Just be happy with what you have. Why? You have, don't complain, kind of that, first world problems thing. What's your issue? You have everything. And so there was a lot of guilt and shame that kept me in the situation because I thought I shouldn't want anything more. And, a year after that, I was engaged and I broke up my engagement and I moved out and I started on this journey. And it's interesting because now as I'm writing my book and I'm looking back, I'm thinking, God, I was so naive because I thought, oh yeah, cool. We'll just break up and I'll go move into my place and that's it. I'll be just happily ever after and everything will be great. And that was just the tip of the iceberg. That was just the start of a journey that brought me through some highs and lows.
Oh my goodness. We're definitely going to get more into this, but what is hitting me in the forehead, and I know this, this is we're not all of us. I don't want to generalize to that extreme, but many, many, many of us have bought into the idea of what will bring happiness. And more often than not, the people who have ultimately achieved all of those things are the most unhappy people because they've realized they've been sold a bill of goods and they've totally figured it out and they don't know where to go from there. So now the work, like you said, tip of the iceberg. Now the work starts. You have to figure out for yourself what is going to make you happy in the face of everyone around you going, why the hell are you not happy? And part of it is too, like there's a whole nother layer. The people around you who don't want you to change anything, it's because they're still buying into that bill of goods. They still believe that what you achieved will bring them happiness. And if you're saying it doesn't, what do they do then? So they don't want you to start making changes and live a different life.
100%. I mean, it threatens what their belief system is. And I love that you said, let's not generalize everyone, because I have a lot of really great friends and family that have the life, have the house and the family and they live in the suburbs and they're happy and it's great for them. And it's not for everyone. So I love that you brought that in there. And yes, this threatens other people's mold of, this was the bill of goods, right? This was the equation that I was sold and I got it. And so now if you're disrupting that, if you're being the disruptor, which, that's been me, if you're being the disruptor, then that threatens what I believe to be true for myself. And what I say to that is always be examining what's true for you. Like always be looking at. So if someone in your environment is shaking things up and you start to get afraid, use that as information. Like, am I happy? Am I doing things I want to do? Am I in alignment with my inner soul's calling, or am I just towing the party line?
Yeah. And I love how you brought that up, Giovanna, that it's not to say you can't have those things. You can't, you can have the house, the car, the guy, the business and all, or the job, all of that, and be happy, but it's not those things that will do it for you. Chances are if somebody has all of those things and they are genuinely happy, it's because they've found and recognize and honor the things that do make them truly happy and put the time and effort into those things as well. So we're not saying you have to sell everything and live the life of poverty like a monk and all of that. You don't. It's just if there's an attachment that these are the things that bring me happiness, that's where you'll get deceived.
Yeah, absolutely. It's examining where you get your happy from. And for me, my formula has been external stuff makes you happy. When I'm the right weight, which I'm working on it, but when I'm the right weight, I'm going to be happy. When I have the right guy, I'm going to be happy. If I'm driving the right car, so we have all of these external representations of the formula of what's supposed to make us happy. And the unfortunate and the devastating thing is when you have all of that and then you look around and you're like, I'm disconnected from my soul. I'm disconnected from spirit. I feel empty and I'm just numbing myself. So I call it the walking dead. Mm-hmm. And that's the life I was living. I was just going through the motions. I kept eating. I was putting on weight and putting on weight and putting on weight. I was devastated. I was unhappy. And I wasn't acknowledging it until it smacked me in the face. And my smack in the face was my mom passing away.
And Giovanna, you have definitely overcome a lot. When you talk about that time in your life, I know you get it when obviously I'm going to lead you right into sharing, a story of self-doubt, your playing small moment. I'm not going to say everything's cured and you're better, but you've definitely gotten to a place where you're enjoying success and you're sharing what you've learned with other people. But if you gave us an overview of, a tough time in your life. Now what I'd like you to do is get specific on a particular story in which you were playing small and the lessons you've learned having come out the other side of it.
Yeah, the first story that comes up for me, I was in Mexico. I had just woken up from a nightmare. I think it was about 3 weeks early. I had gone there to escape a horrible breakup and some devastating life incidences. This is about a year and a half after my leaving my suburban life. And I was in Mexico and I was on a bed and I had just woken up from a nightmare and I was devastated and rocking myself and crying tears. I don't even know where they were coming from. And I literally thought that I was going to be rolled out of Mexico in a body bag, not because I was going to kill myself, because that wasn't in my consciousness, but I felt like the pain was so deep and the grief coming up over the breakup and residual grief over my mom and things that had just gone wrong in my life and choices I had made. It was so deep. I thought I'm going to die of a broken heart. I was by myself. I was gone away. I didn't know anyone, and I was just sitting on the edge of this bed and I was rocking myself thinking, my heart hurts so much. I don't even know if I can survive this. And I had this instinct come to me. I had this peace come over me, and I just heard, put your arms around yourself. And I did. I put my arms around myself, and I kept rocking, and I kept saying, you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. It's going to be fine. And it was such a defining moment for me because it was the first time that I ever comforted myself. And I know that sounds radical, but it's the first time I ever comforted myself. It's the first time that I was ever there for myself. And I was forced to, because I didn't have anyone. I didn't, and no friends were around that I could call. I just was in this bubble of isolation. And I wrapped my arms around myself and I just kept rocking myself. And I eventually felt this calm that came over me, and I eventually fell asleep. And I remember waking up the next day, after the previous day, which was an entire day of crying, and going outside, and it was a new day. I don't even know what happened. It was miraculous. It was a new day. I had this new perspective, and I suddenly got this lesson of, no one's going to be there for you except for you and your faith in yourself. And for me, my faith in source. And it was liberating. And, I've told this story before, and people are like, oh, what an awful realization that nobody's going to be there for you. And I'm like, no. You don't understand. Coming from a victim consciousness of how I was raised and how I lived my life up until then, that was the best realization I could have made, is no one is coming to save you, but you can save yourself. And that was huge for me. That was a huge story. It was, probably, I would say, my second big grief point in my life up until that point. And that was it. It was just learning that I could do it and I would survive. And it didn't matter if nobody was around, that I had the resources within myself.
Giovanna, okay. Have you listening to this story, let's dive into this. Yeah. I found myself becoming completely calm as you were sharing the story. That is powerful. That is a powerful realization. And I'm curious, have you yet had a chance to read Brené Brown's new book, Braving the Wilderness?
It is on its way from Amazon. No, I haven't yet.
You're going to love this because this completely backs up what you're saying and is in alignment with your story. In the book, Brené shares a quote from Maya Angelou, and I don't have it in front of me, but I'll paraphrase it, where Maya Angelou says, "You belong to no one and nowhere." Right. And Brené shared the quote in the beginning and talked about how it was the only thing that had her feeling in discord with everything that Maya Angelou has shared over her lifetime. And at the end of the book, she was like, oh my God, it makes perfect sense, because when you realize you belong only to yourself, yes, and not to anybody else and not to any one place. Belonging, it has to do with owning yourself, with, being within yourself, which is exactly what you were saying. And Maya's quote goes on to say, the price is high, but the rewards are great, right? That you do have to pay the price to realize nobody's coming to save you and you don't belong anywhere. But the reward is so great when you realize you belong to yourself and you can go from there.
I love it. I love it. I did hear her speak about that in an interview as she's been promoting the book, which is what led me to order the book. But I got goosebumps when you reminded me of that quote, because it is so true. And like I said, when you've lived your life in victim consciousness, which unfortunately globally, we kind of are in this, you did it to me and it's your fault. And, we don't take responsibility.
Yeah. If you hadn't done X, I wouldn't have done Z.
Right. Totally. And in that moment, rocking myself on the corner of that bed, I could have blamed my ex, and I could have blamed, and I was just grieving, and I could have blamed so many people, and I probably was, but I was there. No, none of those people were in that room. It was just me, myself, and God in that room. And it was either die of a broken heart, because literally I thought my heart was going to explode, or, figure it out. And my figuring it out wasn't mental in the moment. As we just said before the recording started, I can be very analytical and figure it out and problem solve. It was just surrendering. Yeah.
That's beautiful. All right, Giovanna, now we're going to talk about leadership style, because there is no one way to lead. We all have different personalities, strengths, experiences, and they all blend together to create our leadership style. And if we can own what our leadership style is, we actually become more powerful and influential as a leader. So, Giovanna, how would you describe your leadership style?
I absolutely loved this question because I have never stopped to ponder this. And it really got me to slow down and look at what is that? Like what is a leadership style and what is mine? And what I can only share, because of course I'm not on the outside looking in, but I can share just feedback that I've received. And what I find powerful is leading by example. My life pretty much is an open canvas. Like I believe that the reason that I'm a coach and the reason I do transformational work with women is because I got to go through my own stuff and then share that stuff. So for me, leading by example, being authentic, and visibility, which is, one of the things I coach on the most. That's leadership, right? Is that authentic sharing of oneself. And that doesn't mean, I'm doing all my processing and healing myself through my clients or on Facebook or on my podcast. It's about actually sharing what you've learned. And that's how I perceive that I lead. That's also the feedback that I've received.
I love that. And Giovanna, what is one thing you're working on right now that you're really excited about and you want to share with us?
Well, besides my podcast, which is my new baby, which I absolutely love. You're my podcast shero, I have to tell you. But my book, so I just started my book, and it is about my story, and I'm really excited about it because it's been in the background kind of tapping on me for the last year, if not more. And I just started that, and I'm really excited to be writing it. I get really giddy when I get to sit down and work on it, and it just feels like my next new baby.
It's cathartic to sit down and write a book, and you do get excited to share it.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's going over old wounding. So there's part of my excitement is there's more stuff I'm sure in there that's more realizations, more awarenesses. So I'm sure it's going to be very healing in and of itself.
Awesome. And I'll be looking forward to that. So you're definitely going to have to keep me posted so then I can blast it out to everybody. Awesome. And Giovanna, on the flip side of things, what would you say is your biggest leadership or business challenge that you're faced with right now?
I'm going to say the same thing I said for the other question, which is visibility. I find that as visible as I enjoy being and that I think I'm being, I don't think I'm being visible enough. And it's, you teach what you most need to learn. So I think for me, I'm challenged with getting out there more and sharing a little more. It's funny, I had this interesting feedback from someone lately about sharing my story. And I said, I've shared it so much and I've written blogs and blah, blah, blah. And so I'm like, everybody's heard it. And she said, no, not everybody's heard it. So it's interesting. It's the same thing, right? Being more visible.
Okay. So I heard a couple of things in what you said. There's getting in front of more people, right? And not assuming that everyone has heard your story before, right? We can bore ourselves, sharing the same story over and over again. I get it. I totally get that. But also, but when we recognize okay, we're in front of a new crowd who hasn't heard our story before. And if it can help the other people who have already heard it, it could help these people too. But you also said sharing more. And that to me sounds more like vulnerability. What is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, to me, visibility and vulnerability go hand in hand, right? If your ability to be vulnerable also makes you really visible, right? And kind of vice versa in a way. So yeah, they do definitely go hand in hand. And that's a great catch. That's totally what's part of it.
Okay, so I have no doubt you are pretty good, or you have aligned with the right people who are helping you to be more visible. Is that correct?
Yeah, I have.
Okay, so let's dive into vulnerability. So what are you bumping up against with that?
That's a really good question. And actually, the first thing that came up for me as you said it, which is interesting because I never pondered it before, is kind of backtracking to that beginning of my story where I had all this shame around wanting more, which actually kept me in a bad situation. And so it's not the same kind of, I would say, shame or guilt, but it is that little bit of edginess around certain parts of my story, which I won't reveal because they'll be in the book. But it is a little bit of edginess around certain parts of my story and feeling the collective maybe shaming that might happen, right? So there's always a fear of that. And this is why I love Brene Brown's work, right? Is really diving into that. And that's what I do find is that whenever I'm not being vulnerable or whenever I'm not sharing more, it really is because of a fear of judgment.
Yes, you have the same collective they that I have. What will they say? Who are they? Right? I had this conversation with somebody just over the summer. Like, I don't think they exist. And I was just like,
don't.
What?
Except for in your head. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So what are you afraid they are going to say?
Oh my gosh, that's so actually, that's such a great question because I'm like, what are they going to say? And like the reality is, I don't think they're going to say anything. So it's just those damn they. Yeah. And I mean, thank you for asking that because it just goes to show you that the they just live in your head. Yeah. What are they going to say is absolutely nothing. And, even if they did say something, what I realize more and more, especially as I've gotten older and gone through these things, is that it doesn't matter because I know my truth and I know who I am. So, yeah, they are probably not going to say anything.
No, and probably
and likely
they are right. And the reality is, like, they are probably going to thank you for being so vulnerable and honest in your book. I actually tested this out after the conversation I had over the summer, and they I thought didn't say anything, just like you said, and there was a whole nother group of people that thanked me.
Oh, you just reminded me of something beautiful. Yes, absolutely, fully agree. I remember being in a circle of coaches. It was a mastermind group. And I remember the lead coach asked a question about, sharing something that you really you held so much shame and self-judgment about. And it was really edgy for everyone. And as we went around the circle and everybody shared, at the end of it, the question that was asked is, how many people heard the other person's biggest shame or self-judgment and thought either me too or that's not, who cares? And everybody raised their hand because it's so interesting because what you hold the most, shame or guilt or self-judgment about is you amplify it, right? And to other people, you're like, they're like, just really? Like, oh, big deal,
Right.
And that was a really cathartic exercise. And you just reminded me of that.
Yeah, it's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. That's the analogy I was given, that when you're ashamed of something and you're trying to hide it, you have to put so much effort and energy into pushing it under the water that it has power over you.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You can't move, you're limited, you're stuck. If you move, the ball's going to bounce out of the water, but if you just let the ball bounce out of the water, you're like, "Hey, I have this beach ball."
Yeah, and here it is with all its colors.
Right? And just like you said, other people will say, "Oh, I also have a beach ball," or, "Hey, that's not that big of a deal." I love that story that you shared. Yeah. Awesome. So now I'm doubly excited to hear your book, or I should say to read your book, but I also I want the audio version too, so I can hear your voice while you're telling the stories, because I think there is something really powerful when we are willing to share our stories. And I totally get what you said earlier. It's not like you're trying to process with your clients or on social media, but to maturely and responsibly share a story knowing that it's going to help other people.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yay. All right, Giovanna, we're now going to do the quick leadership roundup. So tell us, what is one practice that you have that helps to make you a better leader?
I would say that my own personal spiritual practice, if I'm not centered and if I'm not, coming from a place where it's not just me doing the work, but I'm allowing something to work through me, I'm just not there. I'm not able to be present with my clients. I'm not able to be present in conversation. So my biggest thing for me in terms of leadership, it almost wouldn't be the answer you expect, but it is my spiritual practice. It is, calling in something greater than me to work through me with my clients, because I don't have all the answers. And if I think I do, that's usually when I make all the mistakes.
And what advice would you give your younger self?
Find love inside yourself.
And Giovanna, share with us a success quote or a mantra and why it has meaning for you.
There's a couple that popped into my mind, but it's literally one that I, kind of created, which goes back to my first point, which is, you're not doing this alone.
And why does that have meaning for you? How does that live in your life?
It lives in my life twofold. One is I am someone who is a great problem solver and someone who, it's like there's a problem that needs fixing, there's a solution that needs getting. Get out of my way, let me figure it out, I'm going to do it. Very cerebral. And I kind of make the joke that for the first 36 years of my life, God was kind of sitting on the sidelines and he or she had their arms crossed, tapping their foot, going, let me know when you want me to jump in here. And I was like, no, I'm fine. I got it. I'm good. I got it. And, that's what it speaks to, is that actually I'm not doing this alone, whether it's this life, whether it's this interview, whether it's this coaching session, whether it's the book, whether it's whatever this is, that there are greater resources than just my left thinking analytical brain that can help here. And so It actually strengthens and reinforces where I come from, because I don't have to figure it all out. In fact, I can't with my little human egoic self figure it all out. So that's what it reminds me of. Yeah.
Love it. And lastly, Giovanna, what is the best way for this community to connect with you?
Yeah, so they can find me on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. I'm there under She Rises Podcast, or they can go to sherisespodcast.com and they can find out a little bit more there about me and what I'm up to in the podcast.
All right. And for those of you listening, I know you're on the go, you're in the car, you're out for your run. You can find all the links and resources Giovanna shared in this episode at womentakingthelead.com. If you put her name in the search bar, her show notes page will come right up, and she spells her name Giovanna. And Giovanna, thank you so much for taking the time to inspire and enlighten us. We are all better for having met you.
Thank you, Jody, for having me. It was an honor to be here.
Before we say goodbye, if you have not yet joined the Women Taking the Lead private Facebook group, come join. Hang out with me and other amazing go-getting women who know the power of community and networking just like you. Go to womentakingthelead.com/group and click on the green Join Group button. Thank you all for joining me on Women Taking the Lead. And to strengthen you on your own leadership journey, I'd like to send you off with a quote from Marianne Williamson, so here goes. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. Again, thank you for joining me, and here's to your success.